In this video, we are going to make a new script for our waypoints and game manager. So let's go to our script. Here I'm going to create a new script and we're going to call it game manager. So now let's open it. First, I'm going to make this script as a singleton so we can get access to it from the other script. So here public static game manager, and we want to make it instance. Then we are going to make a wake function. We call that instance is equal to this script. Now we need some variable for our game manager. I'm going to use the const float waiting time, and as a default I want to give around 1 second. So now here I'm going to write public game object is our spawner point. Then the next one will be the list of our public game object array, and we want the enemies, the list of our enemies, and then the next one we want public int max enemies on the screen. We want to check how many enemies are spawned in our screen. So max enemies on the screen. Then we want the number of our total enemies. And the next one will be enemies per spawn. How many enemies we should spawn every time. And then another one that we need, let's put it under our max enemies on the screen. We also need public int, I'm going to call it enemies on the screen. We need to know how many is our current screen and how many is the max one, so then we don't spawn anymore when they reach to the max one. So now we need to go down under our update. I'm going to make a new function, enumerator, and I'm going to call it spawn. And what is this enumerator? Enumerator work like delay. He give a time like clock. He give a time to spawn something. So now here I'm going to say if enemies per spawn is bigger than 0 and enemies on the screen less than our total enemies, then we want to spawn them. So, but before we spawn them, we need also to check some other condition. First, we need to loop, so for int I is equal to 0, then if our I less than our enemies per spawn, then we want to add 1 to it. Now here we say if we are going to check if enemies on screen less than our max enemies on screen, then we want to instantiate the enemies. Here, game object, not this one, game object, so new enemy, is equal to instantiate enemies. Then we want to use array number 0 for now. Later we are going to change it as a game object. So this one should be big G. Now we are going to say new enemy dot transform dot position is equal to our spawn point. Then we also want to add one enemy to enemy on the screen plus equal to 1. Now to remove this error here, we need to give a time. So the base place should be here, I think. Yeah, here I'm going to say yield return. New wait for second. And here I'm going to say waiting time. And we want start quoting spawn. So at the start function, I'm going to call that one as well. So let's go to our start, call it as well. So now here we are going to check if we have a less than enemy than total enemies. If we have, then we are going to look through our enemies. Later we are going to give the list of our enemies. And then we want also to check how many enemies we have in the screen and how many is the max. We should have the max amount of enemies on the screen. If the enemies on the screen is less than the max enemies on the screen, then we are allowed to instantiate a new enemy. And we want also instantiate every new enemy for waiting time that we give it here. So that was, I think, the constant here. That means every 1 second we want to spawn the new enemy. So now let's save our script and going back to the game. After it compiled, I'm going here to create an empty object. I'm going to reset it. Then I'm going to call that game manager. And I'm going to attach our game manager script to our game manager. As you see, we have a spawn point. I'm going to give this a spawn point. Then we have enemies, so which we need to put our prefab enemies, and I'm going to give the first one for now to there. And that is at our element 0, index 0. Then we want the max of enemies on the screen. We can say 8. Enemies on the screen, total enemies, maybe here 8. Enemy per spawn is 1. So now let's test it. If I play, as you see here as you see in the enemies on the screen, we are going to instantiate one after another one until we have max enemies on the screen. So that's worked fine without any problems. I'm going to back. I think we don't need this part because we already put 1 for that, and if it's 0, anyway we will not spawn any enemies. So let's check it again if we broke something or not. Yeah, everything for ST worked fine without any problems. As you see, so enemies spawn again and again. Total of 8 enemies here. So now guys, in the next part we are going to update the waypoint here so that our enemies move toward these waypoints. So see you in the next video.